Known for his work on several television series, including The Office, Saturday Night Live, The Simpsons, Parks and Recreation, and King of the Hill, writer and producer Greg Daniels has created a unique take on the afterlife with his new show, Upload. With the effects of technology and capitalism in mind, this show tells a romantic story set against a not quite so dystopian future. I'm Ronald Young Jr., and I'm on the couch. All right, this is Ronald, and I'm on the couch after watching Upload. Upload is a show created by Greg Daniels on Amazon Prime, starring Robbie Amell, Andy Allo, Allegra Edwards, Zainab Johnson, and Kevin Bigley. Upload. Okay, so I had seen this show pop up on Amazon Prime some time ago, and I remember saying, I just saw kind of like a picture of a woman in a VR headset, and I was like, that seems interesting. I wonder what that's about. And then I saw a couple of, people reach out and say, hey, you should check this out. This is pretty good. And they were like, it's a little bit like a long form version of a Black Mirror episode. And I'm a huge fan of Black Mirror. Watching this show, it tells the story of, a close future. Maybe a few years, 10 years. It's definitely meant to be in the not so distant future, in which there's a world that's automated by technology. There's automated cars. There's apps for everything. It takes kind of everything to its natural end. There's a Tinder, but instead of it just being a Tinder, it's a app that's 100% designed just for hooking up, in which they give each other a star rating. So it takes every single thing about our lives now, every single technological point about our lives now, and takes it all the way to the end. It's true satire, true what if, takes you all the way to the end. So it takes you to the end of, like I said, Tinder. But the main plot point is that in the future, when you die, you're given the opportunity to upload your consciousness into a digital environment in which you can live out, where you can continue to live conceivably forever. Now, immediately they introduced the limitations, which is that you have to have the money. You have to have the money to have unlimited memory. Otherwise, you only get 2 free gigs a month. So immediately they set these parameters, and then they tell us a story that's set in this universe. The main character's name is Nathan. And it's a story about Nathan and the person. He is a person that, I won't go too deep into it, but his counterpart, I don't want to give away too much, but his counterpart is a person named Nora, who, again, don't want to go into too many details because I don't want to give away too much. And it's important to the story, but it tells about their relationship and as it grows. So this show it's so many things. It does, it does a lot. The commentaries on capitalism, it dives deep into the idea of classism, what that means in a world that is super technologically advanced. It deals with the idea of a freemium model, i.e. something that you can get into for free, but then have to pay premium rates in order to continue to enjoy, kind of like with the apps on our phone. It explores branding and merging. There's a couple of instances in which there's companies that have merged together that kind of don't make any sense. I think there was one of them called the Nokia Taco Bell, where the technology is merging with fast food companies in order to deliver things in a digital world as well, so they can get a piece of the pie as well. So the idea of what a free market continues to look at in the future, you're looking at people who are living in dorm style apartments, i.e. there's 2 beds in one room with the kitchen attached in one place, because that's The disparity of wealth has gotten to a point where minimum wage means something completely different in the future. It means that even if you're working at a computer, working in what would today be considered a corporate job, you're sitting at a desk working at a computer, but you're still only making minimum wage, and what that looks like in the future. It deals with that. Mainly, I think one of the main storylines is that it's a romance, and it tells the story of this blossoming relationship between Nathan and Nora, which again, I hope that doesn't tell too much, but you jump into that pretty quickly into the story. That's all interesting. For me, watching the world build out, as a big fan of Black Mirror, this is like watching an extended episode of Black Mirror, but a lot of elements of The Good Place. It has the whimsy of The Good Place. It has the humor, well, and not all of the humor of The Good Place, but it has very well placed jokes in there that are very funny and very easy to watch. It kind of makes the rest of it go down, because it is, in a sense, a dystopian look at our future. But for the first time, it's not a dystopian look that ends with everybody dying from a plague, or and today that's a kind of a loaded thing to say, but everyone dying from something, or some a nuclear event happening. It's not something like that. Instead, it's saying, what if we just continue on the path that we're on? What's the natural next steps to that? And in this world, it's a post-religious world in which people who believe in an afterlife as a heaven and all that, they are dismissed as, that's just ridiculous. Why don't you just upload yourself? That is the afterlife. So those conversations are very interesting, and seeing people that have faith and believe how they're treated by others. And it's not necessarily a persecution, but there's a bit of dismissiveness that comes with it, because everyone has subscribed to the technology. So in terms of the world they've built, amazing. They've done a very good job. They're committed to kind of the visual gags and, the things that make this world tick. They're committed to those things, and it makes the show, it makes it easy for you to be immersed in this world, and it makes it easy to binge it. There's 10 episodes, and I binged every single one. Some of them are longer than others. I believe they're all about either half an hour to about 30 minutes or so. Actually, I can check right now. I have it up in front of me. So let's see. So yeah, they're all about 30 minutes long. So I think the longest one is episode 1, which is about 46 minutes. So you can binge through this whole thing in probably an afternoon. And it's already been renewed for a second season. And once you watch through it, you'll see why. But it does a very good job of making you want to stay immersed in this world. It has a lot of romance elements, but it also has a lot of mystery elements, and I'm here for the mystery. There's something that's beginning to unfold that they don't even get to the bottom of by the end of season 1. And again, I hope this isn't a spoiler, but as you're watching it, you're just like, oh wow, they're continuing to tell this story, and you're just immersed. You're like, and you're not immersed in a way that says, are they going to figure this out, as much as you're just like, wow, there's so many layers here, and they're going a little deeper and a little deeper. And it's funny because you're watching what feels like a lighthearted show. It doesn't make me feel pessimistic about our future. It just kind of makes me look at this and be like, well, that's one possible outcome. And then trying to, in my head, say, how would I fit in that outcome? Like, how would that look for me specifically? So I think, and it's enjoyable to watch a show that makes me think in that way. So lots of world building, sometimes a little hokey. Every now and then it feels like a little hokey, a little sappy. Those are the romantic elements coming through, but I take those with everything else. So it didn't really diminish this show for me. By the end, I felt very invested in every character, everything that was going on. And it's doing a good job of building complex characters. I think that's one of the best parts of this golden age of television, which is that they're doing a very good job of building characters that are very complex. They're not just one dimensional. They're not going to just do one thing. They are people that can be good and have flaws, which I think is important for all of us to see represented in the media that we're consuming every day, because it allows us to really see true reflections of ourselves. So really enjoyed those parts. The idea of the afterlife, what it would look like, what you would want from it. I think this is the best parallels to The Good Place. Whereas in The Good Place, in a lot of ways, it felt very like the most advanced technology of all time, and the way they presented it. But watching this, you can tell that it is very tech based when they think about things like the code, things like frame rating, all of those come up. I think frame rating is the right word. Josh will tell me if I'm wrong, but yeah, it thinks of all of those things while you're watching it. So it feels very much like even the afterlife is in a sense, in a sense, flawed. I enjoyed all that commentary. I really did. I enjoyed this show. The performances are great. The actor who plays Nathan, Robbie Amell, does a great job. Andy Allo does a great job. All of the main characters, Allegra Edwards, Zainab Johnson, she plays a coworker and friend of one of the main characters. She's very enjoyable to watch, very funny. And it's very funny without being a stereotype. She's a Black woman. And I think it's very easy to write the best friend Black woman in one specific way. Whereas I don't feel like this one is written in that way. She's a lot of fun, but it feels like she's just supposed to be a fun person as opposed to be like just the sassy best. Oh, I know, girl. Like, and not that there's anything wrong with that per se, but it feels like they corner Black women with those roles. And the lead character is also a Black woman, so that also feels feels progressive in a way that you don't get to see very often. So those are both that's another enjoyable element to the show. That being said, sitting here watching it, and I was thinking through my rating, and I was like, it's hard for me to give this less than 4 stars because, while there's some sappy elements and there's some parts where I'm like, I'm not really here for that. There's just the parts that are funny, the parts that are enjoyable, the parts that, that are mysterious, and even the parts that are like thriller and dramatic. I think some people might call that like parts of it tonally unbalanced in those cases because at some point you're just looking at you're just watching what's going on. And you're watching this kind of absurd, futuristic world, and then something like serious will happen. You'll be like, whoa, that's kind of serious. And I didn't see it as totally unbalanced. It all felt like it was par for the course for the universe in which they've built. There's a show called Pushing Daisies, and I felt like it was a show that also dealt with death. And it was canceled. I think it had maybe 2 or 3 seasons and it got canceled. But I remember that show did a very good job of dealing with death. And this show does a very good job of dealing with death in a lighthearted way. But the thing is, when you have shows about death, there's always going to be kind of this background to it that's very much like, it's almost like a dull sense in the back of your mind that, man, they're talking about death here. Like, even if they're making jokes and stuff, they're like still talking about death. It's a lot, and almost in a lot of the ways, the way 6 Feet Under was, where you watch it and there's lighthearted elements, but it's like, death is all around these people. But I guess it almost approaches death the way that people who work in the industry of death look at it, where it's just like, this is something that happens. We don't really want to think about it happening to us, but when you are around it all the time, you don't avoid it. You talk about it because it's a part of the life that you live in. And I feel like all of those elements, because it's a show about death, it can be romantic, it can be silly, it can be fun, and deal with every one of those elements and still be an enjoyable show. So I think this is a great Saturday afternoon show. I just finished it. I started it last night, which was Friday. Today is Saturday when I'm recording this. And I finished it. I was actually, I did an episode check as I was getting ready to do the reel, and I couldn't even realize there's 10 episodes. I couldn't even realize I didn't even realize I was already on the 10th episode. So blasted right through it. You will probably enjoy this show. I think once you get into the first episode, I think you'll want to see more and more where it's going, what's going to happen. So yeah, I think a 4-star show. I really enjoyed it. I think it's a good one for, I don't know if I don't think kids are going to be that interested in this show. There's also, there's a few elements I don't think you would want your kids seeing in the show. I think it's a great show for couples, for adults, for, I think it's a great show. Men, women, I think everybody will find something to like in the show, but definitely a great show for couples. Like if we are looking for a new show to watch together, I think this is a good show to watch with your significant other. Yeah. And with that being said, Leaving the Theater is a production of Oh It's Big Ron Studios. Theme music by the mysterious Breakmaster Cylinder. To find out more about this show and other Oh It's Big Ron Studio shows, follow me on Twitter and Instagram at ohitsBigRon. That's at ohitsBigron. If you like this show, check out our sister show, Time Well Spent. Leaving the Theater will be back soon, but until then, I'll be here on the couch.